Welcome to Kairos Research Center podcast, Christian faith seeking understanding, intellectual witness, and spiritual renewal.
Your exposition brings out a most unexpected idea. When you say the Great Commission is about rebuilding a global civilization. Who would have made this kind of connection between the task of evangelism and disciple making with the creation mandate to build civilization? Of course, that raises the question, how does making disciples actually rebuild civilization? And some more we haven't explained yet. According to the Bible, what is a civilization?
I will answer the second question first. We will look at civilization in terms of the different spheres of culture that make it a civilization. We saw that civilization is the outcome of humanity being created in the image of God to continue developing the earth from where God left off. This is more than developing just the earth itself. It also involves developing culture. What then is culture? Culture is what humanity does with what God has created. Culture includes physical things that we make, as well as our way of living and our way of thinking. When culture has reached a certain stage of development, it is a civilization. In retrospect, despite the image of God being marred because of the fall, a civilization could still be built. The question is, what kind of civilization would it be? The first civilization was built by Cain and his descendants, but it was neither in fellowship with God nor consistent with His will. By looking at this civilization, we can recognize the marks of a civilization. First of all, they built a city, Genesis 4:17. Together with it, they developed an economy, 4:20. Cultivated the arts, 4:21. And invented technology, 4:22. Hence, a civilization is about life in the city supported by the economy, the arts, and technology. Why is this so? Why is the city crucial to civilization? In the Bible and in the world today, a city is basically a permanent settlement of a relatively large and diverse population supported by the means needed to sustain such a settlement. What then are these means? The most basic means is a viable economy, without which there cannot even be a permanent settlement. The density and diversity of an urban population brings about complexities. These complexities challenge the creative human mind to come up with solutions. This results in new technology and improvements to the economy. Also, human beings are spiritual beings with spiritual needs. They would express their creativity in and through the arts. So the marks of a civilization is a developed culture in terms of urban living supported by the economy, the arts, and technology. It is not difficult to see why these are the marks of a civilization, for we cannot imagine how even the smartest chimpanzees could have developed a culture in terms of the economy, the arts, and technology. This helps us better appreciate the reality of humanity being made in the image of God with God-like abilities. The economy, the arts, and technology are the three characteristic spheres of culture that make it a civilization. Beyond these spheres of culture, we need to include the spheres of the family and education. Because without family, there is no civilization. And without education, a civilization cannot survive. Also, for the civilization to thrive, we need to add the sphere of religion. This sounds outrageous in the modern world of science. Not so if religion is properly understood. Religion is the fear of God. According to Romans 2:14-16, fearing God is being conscientious. Even an atheist may be conscientious. Religion is about being conscientious in living out what is left of our God-like qualities of love and justice. Unconscionable behavior is considered uncivilized, so religion is crucial to civilization. Finally, for a city to function properly, there must be some form of legal and political organization. In other words, the sphere of government. Therefore, there are 7 influential spheres of culture that together make it a civilization: family, education, economy and business, religion, arts and entertainment, the media, and government. I have added business to economy because the modern economy is business driven. Entertainment is included with the arts because the arts are to be enjoyed. I have replaced technology in general with a specific expression of technology, that is the media, which is driven by communication technology. For in modern times, the media is crucial to help ensure that a civilization is what it's supposed to be. This is because God instituted government to do justice and love mercy, and media plays a crucial role in holding the government accountable to do that. Every individual will be in more than one of the spheres. For a Christian, in his church life, he is in the sphere of religion. In his home life, he is in the sphere of family. In his work life, unless he is in Christian ministry, he will be in one of the other 5 spheres according to his occupation. Now we turn to look at how the Great Commission is about rebuilding civilization. The Great Commission is about making disciples of all nations. When disciples are made in a nation, they will gradually be disciples in all the 7 spheres of culture in the nation. Disciples are in fellowship with Christ through the Holy Spirit. So when the number of disciples in a sphere increases, that sphere is increasingly in fellowship with God. And disciples are taught to observe everything Christ has commanded in every sphere of their life. So when the number of disciples in a sphere increases, that sphere is increasingly consistent with God's will. Hence, when disciples are made in a nation, the national civilization is increasingly in fellowship with God and consistent with His will. Therefore, when disciples are made in all nations, it amounts to rebuilding the global civilization to be in fellowship with God and consistent with His will. Of course, all this assumes that it is disciples of Christ and not just converts to Christianity that are being made. A test as to whether disciples and not just converts are being made is whether in their life the spiritual is dichotomized from the secular. For when this happens, except in the sphere of religion, the converts are no different from non-believers. This is why it is important to see the Great Commission as the renewed creation mandate.
Dr. Leong, thanks for explaining how making disciples of all nations can be related to rebuilding civilization. Because there's a key middle term there is nations. But the term nation is a very modern term, I would say. Perhaps you can explain specifically what is a nation according to the Bible, and furthermore, is the biblical concept of nation applicable in our modern context? Care to explain?
The origin of nations is summed up in Genesis 10:32. These are the clans of the sons of Noah, according to their lines of descent, by their nations. And from these clans, the nations were spread out over the earth after the flood. This verse teaches 2 things about nations. Firstly, all nations originated from Noah. So all human beings after the flood, including everyone alive today, are descended from one man. So there is only one race, the human race. what we call race, as in Malay or Chinese, is artificially invented. For if a man says his race is Chinese because his father is Chinese, why then is his father Chinese? If he says it is because his grandfather is Chinese, why then is his grandfather Chinese? We can keep on asking this question until we come to Noah. Was Noah Chinese? What we call race refers to physical characteristics, especially skin color, facial features, and hair type. We are intuitively aware that race is about purely physical characteristics. We may find ourselves saying to someone whose parents are both Chinese, but you do not look Chinese, you look Malay. If every descendant of Noah had the same skin color, facial features, and hair type, this concept of race would not have been invented at all. In Jeremiah 13:23, we read, "Can the Ethiopian change his skin color, that is, or the leopard his spots?" So the Bible recognizes skin color, but no social significance is given to it. The concept of race as a social category is not in the Bible. Instead, what we find in the Bible is the more recent concept of ethnicity. Ethnicity refers to a group's social characteristics. This concept is found in the Federal Constitution of Malaysia. In it, a Malay is defined as a person who professes the religion of Islam, habitually speaks the Malay language, conforms to Malay custom. So an Indian Muslim can be a Malay in terms of ethnicity, though he's still Indian in terms of race. According to Genesis 10:32, nations were formed out of clans scattered to different parts of the earth. The scattering was the outcome of God confusing their language so that one clan could no longer understand another clan. After the scattering, people of the same clan living within the same territory, speaking the same language, would develop a common culture. Naturally, this culture would be different from that of another clan living in a different territory and speaking a different language. So in Genesis 10, what distinguishes one nation from another is their common language and culture, that is, their ethnicity. Hence, the second thing Genesis 10:32 teaches is that a nation is formed based on ethnicity. Race is based on physical characteristics, which are innate and cannot be changed. But nationality is based on cultural characteristics, which are acquired and can be changed. Hence, race is exclusive, whereas nationality is inclusive. This explains why, from its very beginning, the nation of Israel could incorporate people not descended from Jacob, also known as Israel. However, just having the same language and culture is not enough for the country to be considered a nation, whether in the Bible or in today's world. What then is a nation? We will look at modern understandings of nation and that match that of the Bible. Hugh Seaton Watson defines a nation as follows: a community of people whose members are bound together by a sense of solidarity, a common culture, a national consciousness. We can understand what he means by a sense of solidarity and a common culture. But what is national consciousness? At the least, it is the awareness that one is part of something more than one's race or ethnicity. According to Franz Fanon, this awareness includes the sense that all the people in one's country share a common destiny, as well as have a share in building up that destiny. I repeat, all the people in one's country share a common destiny, as well as have a share in building up that destiny. Does this understanding of nation match the concept of nation in the Bible? Yes, for the following reasons. It is natural for members of a clan to feel that they were an integral part of a group because of kinship ties. We can expect each of the nations in Genesis 10 to manifest a sense of solidarity. Now, this sense of solidarity was not based on something loose and temporary, like common interests or even common goals, but on kinship ties, blood relationship. So the people will be aware that they had a common destiny and a share in building up that destiny. Hence, we can expect each of the nations in Genesis 10 to also manifest a national consciousness. In any case, in the Old Testament, Israel obviously demonstrated a sense of solidarity. This can be seen in Judges 19:27-30, which is about the consequences of the gang rape of a Levite's concubine. The concubine presumably died, and the Levite cut up her body into 12 parts and sent them throughout Israel. And the people said, "Such a thing has never been seen or done, not since the day the Israelites came out of Egypt. Just imagine, we must do something. So speak up." It led to a civil war. Israel also clearly demonstrated a national consciousness. This can be seen in 1 Samuel 8:1-5. The elders of Israel came to Samuel and said to him, "You are old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." Verse 5. This expressed their concern for where Israel was heading, the destiny of all Israelites. Being led by a king, all Israelites would contribute to where Israel was heading. Hence, Israel had a sense of solidarity and a national consciousness even before they had a king. What more after? Israel was undoubtedly a nation. Now, the common culture that binds a nation can be a hybrid culture that transcends the specific cultures of distinct ethnic groups. So a nation can be formed from one or more ethnicities. Therefore, a nation can be multiracial as well as multi-ethnic, as long as, in addition to a common national culture, they are also bound by a sense of solidarity and a national consciousness. We have now looked at two aspects of nationhood based on the Bible. What we have just looked at is the meaning of nationhood. That is, a nation is a community of people bound by a common culture, a sense of solidarity, and a national consciousness. What we have looked at previously is God's design for nationhood. That is, a nation is to be a civilization that is in fellowship with God and consistent with His will.